Wait for it.
Athlete have question.
Coach have answer.
Why athlete jump high during high volume? I don't get it.
Okay, there's a lot of reasons. I could answer this in a Russian accent, but I don't want to. So it seems like high volume work almost always helps specifically you, but I think a lot of guys. And one potential reason is that you guys are really detrained when you do volume work. So it serves as a pretty novel stimulus. Another benefit to training close to failure is you recruit more motor units, potentially, according to the size principle when you get to failure, because the central drive is higher. So if you were to take EMG, or you were to, somehow have electrodes on your head, you would see that your neural drive, as you get more fatigued, goes up. And so I think what tends to happen is, as guys fatigue those certain motor units, then they'll start to recruit other motor units that they haven't been necessarily recruiting. So it's possible that when you're doing really, really intense max strength work, you're not necessarily recruiting those to the same degree for some reason, one reason or another. So it's possible that recruiting those motor units makes them stronger when you haven't used them for whatever reason, probably just because you're not getting to the same level of failure. Another potential adaptation is you're increasing cross-sectional area of the muscle. So we know that muscular tension is like the number one thing that's going to determine how much muscle you're going to gain in hypertrophy. It's like the number one signal is tension, but it's also the amount of reps that you do. I think the research is like 20 sets per week of a given muscle group. But we also see some research that says that time under tension is also going to increase lean muscle mass. And so if your time under tension is really, really high, you could just be gaining more cross-sectional area. You're waking up motor units that you haven't used or you haven't touched in some period of time. And then I think the third reason why it's probably the biggest, contributor is that the eccentric forces are significantly lower. So even if you're, and let's say hypothetically you did your 1/30 or whatever the other week, right? And you were at 185, 175. Well, you're not going to get the eccentric loading that you're going to get on, some sort of really explosive, fast half squat or full squat. So your eccentric capacities are not nearly as fatigued. And we often see that your nervous system is not going to be as fatigued either. There is research that shows that like endurance running, extreme endurance running, and like a lot of miles per week can fatigue your nervous system. So it's probably true to some extent as well with volume, especially if you're doing a lot of volume of intensity. But because the intensity, I think, is inherently lower, because that's the only way you can do sets of 30 in your case, I think that you don't end up fatiguing the eccentric capacities of the muscle as much as you do when you're doing, max effort back squatting. And then sometimes max effort back squatting, it might be a central governor in terms of how much force you're able to apply because of some other reason, fear, a joint tendon issue, back pain, something like that. So you're not necessarily recruiting the motor units to the same degree, not because you don't want to, but because there's a central governor in your head that says, don't do this. But when you're doing volume, that's less of a contributor, right? The total loads are less, but you're still able to benefit from those really intense, or relatively low intensity, but hard squat sets. So, I mean, I think those are all potential adaptations. I mean, the proteins breaking down from the metabolic byproducts. I mean, we know that there's a lot of chaos chemically that happens when you go into a set of 30. And it's possible like reactive oxygen species go in there and they slice through proteins like hot butter, more so in a set of 30 than they do in other sets. That doesn't mean that you don't want to do intensity still. It just means that at some point you've got to go back and touch on volume. And I think too, you're probably going to have less joint pain when you're doing volume. So it's, why do you jump high? Well, why don't you jump high when you're doing high intensity stuff? That's maybe a better question, because you're fatiguing your nervous system. You're maybe not getting to the same, as deep into your motor unit pull as you do when you're doing really, really high volume and you're going to like beyond failure essentially. And you are going to have higher eccentric forces and your joints are going to hurt more. So you're going to come into a session, you're going to feel banged up. you're probably not going to feel fresh at all, right? Especially someone like you who's putting what, I don't even know what's your back squat now, 435 and an ass to grass squat. Yeah. And then if you're going to increase the intensity even more, like let's say you're doing true squats, well, that's going to be the most absolutely intense thing. We know that accentuated eccentrics recruit more type 2 fibers. So jumping type 2 fiber dominant, you're going to go do type 2 fiber activity, you're going to fatigue the living hell out of those. So when you go into jump, they're really sensitive. You're not going to be recovered because you did something mega super intense. I think that the same is true with not just squats, but also like RDLs are going to be higher volume. Calf raises are going to be higher volume and lower intensity. Your power cleans and clean pulls are going to be lower intensity. And so it's not going to, it's systemic, you know, it's not just the squats. We're doing that across the board. And I do think eventually it catches up with you. It's also novel. Like most of the year, we're not hitting sets of 20 or sets of 30 or 15, right? Like your intensity is still relatively low if you're just looking at it defined as how much weight you're moving, what movements you're doing, is it multi-joint, single joint, and at what velocity. Relatively slow velocities, your intensities are relatively low. The lifts are still there, but you're not moving them as fast. So I think those are all legitimate reasons. But from your perspective, do you agree with that? Disagree? Do you feel like that resonates with some of the things you feel?
Before I get into that, if you guys want us to apply these principles to your training, go to thpstrength.com. When you sign up, you fill out a form. Based on those answers, we place you into one of 289 training cycles that this man right here has written. You guys counted them, right? The other day, 289?
Yeah, it's 271 or 281 or something.
Yeah, so one of those 289 training cycles best fits you. You have knee pain, Achilles pain, back pain, you're in season, out of season.
And if you really need it,
we'll
write you a new one.
So go check it out, thpstrength.com, if you want to jump higher, get healthier. To answer your question, I think the points that resonate with me the most are, one, most of the time coming into high volume work, a high volume cycle, I am detrained. That's the nature of it. Looking at the fitness fatigue model, usually it's coming out of like a high competition period, where I'm dunking a lot and training's not very hard. We're just squeezing the lemon juice out and trying to get some, basically have fun jumping high. But eventually that party stops, and that party stopped for me. So I think the first couple of weeks, it's like I'm so detrained that how much fatigue I'm building up almost doesn't even matter. It's like my fitness is climbing up at a higher rate than my fatigue is building.
Yeah, and the type of fatigue is not as chronic.
Yeah, yeah. So that brings me to my second point that resonates with me. Just how training effects are specific, fatigue effects are specific. So my last workout, the reason we're making this video is because today I had a session and I jumped well. My last lift was 2 days ago. And the only modification that John made to my training is he had me not go as hard on the power work, which was in the way of clean pulls. And literally verbatim, like you might have said, fatigue is specific. I'm going to get more fatigued. Because I asked you, because I think I had 4x10 deep squat, pretty heavy in there. And John adjusted my clean pulls to be easier so that it's not as fatiguing. But then he had me do the exact same sets and reps as was scheduled 2 days before I'm supposed to jump. And I asked him, why aren't we adjusting the squats as well? And it was like verbatim. You were like, I don't think this is going to fatigue you. It's too general.
Yeah, I was like, it's too light. It's not enough eccentric loading for you to. Volume work just doesn't crush you quite as much.
Which was cool because we knocked out two birds with one stone. It's like I jumped high, had a good session with Billy filming, while also keeping the plan. Instead of, usually stuff like this derails the plan. Like if I'm in the middle of a high intensity cycle, we'll like unload, and then it's like a cascade effect of getting out of the training mojo. But
yeah, I think you were healthy enough. I mean, you're not like perfectly healthy, but you're healthy enough to do the volume, and volume tends to also help tendon pain and joint pain because
Yeah.
the load is so low. So it's like you weep synovial fluid out. Synovial fluid has, certain markers in it, or, different things that can help the joint feel a little bit better, the cartilage recover, which is going to help your PFP. For tendons, we know that hypertrophy is going to increase cross-sectional area. So that's also a positive adaptation you're going to get, but you're also not going to get the negative effects of, your nervous system being super flat, because if anything, the limiter is going to be like metabolic byproducts building up really, really quickly. And I think too, there's part of it that's like a confidence thing. Like you get back in there and you do a set of, 15 or 10 at 265 on a belt squat. It's like, oh, okay. Like I left
I'm fit.
I feel fit. And that was hard, and it feels good to do hard things like that. I think there's also some benefit to doing that.
It's funny, every time I get back into this style of training, like sucks, but it just feels so good for you. Like I'm like, oh, I'm getting better. Like, and
your legs like are fried the rest of the day, but then you wake up and you're like, oh, I don't feel that bad. Like,
and the thing about it too is like when you were describing the higher intensity cycles or the max strength work, that stuff, I usually jump really high when I unload from it. That's like, I get my best days ever. During high volume work, I don't reach that upper echelon, but it's like consistently I can be within 95% of my best.
Yeah.
But it doesn't last forever. Usually week 1 I jump high, week 2 I jump high, and then week 3 is usually where like I start kind of getting crushed.
I think part of that too is the intensity climbs up so much during those periods. Month or week 1, we're doing 50, 55%. Week 2, we're at 60, 65. Next week, we're starting to get into 70, 75. And that's where I think you start to push into, getting close to failure with stuff. You've got a decent amount of weight on your back. For clean pulls, you're probably pulling over 300 at that point, multiple times, multiple sets. It almost turns into a deadlift at some point. And, it does start to add up. It's like the volume and the workload starts to beat you down a little bit, and you start to build up a little fatigue, which is good. And then it takes you about week 1 of the following cycle to bounce back. The deload doesn't usually hit as hard as it does.
We call it the real deload.
Yeah. It's like the novel training stimuli plus being pretty unloaded. It's like this perfect blend of fatigue and fitness, where your fitness is really, really high because you've done a week of training of new stuff, but then you're relatively unloaded because you had a week that was super easy prior to that.
I do have something really interesting from today's session that I noticed. I haven't been able to dunk like this in a long time. Even when I was like peaking a couple months ago, I'm able to sustain a high vertical for way longer. Like today, I could have kept going. We stopped because we don't want to blow up my knees, but it felt like I could have just kept going and going and going. And I think that's a result of doing 30 reps on one set of squat and then having to do the accessory work and then doing 4x10. And
what's funny is like, Donovan, he's been doing mostly rehab, not really hitting much volume and stuff. And like his candle burned a lot quicker. He got like a second win later in the session, but it was like, you're not as fit as you were, whenever we were really, really hitting intensity and stuff like that, especially when he sprints a lot.
Yeah. Bro, like I remember
him up so much.
Like before this training cycle, it felt like I had almost hit like a bullseye of like I have to warm up and then hit my peak, and then I have like 5 jumps, and then it just leaves.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Like, but yeah, when I'm fit from like high volume work, like I can just go.
The same thing's true when I used to do a lot of tempo. My sessions were so long, like I could just go.
Yeah, I was like that too.
I never really had any issues. Like my cardiorespiratory system was so fit, and I could just bounce back from like each jump and just recover so quickly. Now it's like, I always compare myself to like a 1990s Ferrari, like an F40, an 80s Ferrari. That's like, it's really old. It was pretty fast back in the day. Still kind of fast, but like all the other cars have progressed so much. And I'm like, all right, I got to get warm and like, keep the pan so hot before something's going to go. But it was fun. I mean, I'm definitely on that note. I think that everyone did really well today. I would say they were within 93 to 100% of their best. You know what I mean? Like on the lower end, they're 93 when they're actually warm. And then like the higher end guys are getting close to.
It was fun. was our first group THP
We've
session.
never done a session with all 5 of us.
Yeah. For those of
So
you who
that
don't
was,
know, we had John, me, Donovan, Dom, and Josh all
yeah,
jump,
and
and
Tobin.
Tobin was there. All jumping, all pretty healthy. We all probably came out of it banged up, but it's okay.
I did in fact do that.
Before we close it out, I do want to say there is a huge announcement we have coming soon. We'll probably announce it by email. So if you want to get added to that 69-page guide in the description, I think when you get it, you get added to our email automatically. So be on the lookout. Go get the guide and then be on the lookout. We're really excited
for a reason. We're tired for a reason.
If you're wondering why we haven't podcasted as much, why my content has went off a cliff, it's because we've been putting in like 8-hour days, like
just
on one thing.
Yeah,
So,
and it is straight just, you see my eyes? You see these wrinkles? You see these? That's there for a reason, okay?
Yeah.
I've been sleeping a lot still, but it's rough, and it's gonna be awesome, and we're really excited about it. So we'll definitely have that big announcement coming soon. It was very expensive. It's very time consuming. Our time is valuable, and we're spending a lot of time working on it, so it's important. We don't spend our time on things that aren't important.
Yep.
All right.
We'll see. See ya.
See you guys.